Captain stared at the screen and felt something cold move through her chest. In 20 years of deep space salvage work, she had seen many strange things. Dead ships floating in the dark, ancient stations from wars nobody remembered, bodies frozen in poses of fear. But she had never seen anything like this. The structure hung in the emptiness of the Carina void, a place so empty that most pilots refused to enter it. There was nothing here, no stars nearby, no planets, no dust, just endless black in every direction. And yet somehow something was here, something that should not exist. "How old?" she asked, her voice quiet. Doctor, the ship's expert on ancient alien cultures, looked up from his console. His face had gone pale. "The computer says 2 billion years, maybe more. Captain, this thing existed before Earth even formed." The bridge of the Persistent Hope fell silent. 12 crew members stared at the image on the main screen. The structure was black, so black it seemed to eat the light from their ship's searchlights. It had angles that made eyes hurt when she looked too long, sharp corners that seemed to point in directions that did not exist. "We should leave," said, "now, right now." Security officer stepped forward. He was a big man with scars on his face from a dozen violent encounters. Very little scared him, but even he looked nervous. "What's the problem, Doc?" Pointed at the screen with a shaking finger. "Those symbols on the surface, do you see them?" Looked closer. Yes, there were markings carved into the black metal, strange shapes that meant nothing to her. "I have seen those symbols before," continued. "On 17 different dead worlds. 17 civilizations that no longer exist. Every single one of them carved those same warnings into their ruins before they disappeared." "What do the warnings say?" asked. "Swallowed hard, do not open." The crew exchanged worried looks. Chief engineer, a woman who had survived the collapse of the Martian underground colonies as a child, crossed her arms. "We're salvage crew. We open things. That's our job." "Not this," pleaded. "Whatever is in there, 17 species thought it was worth dying to keep it locked away. We should respect their wishes." Captain thought about it. She thought about her crew, about their families back home, about the money they needed to keep the ship running. She thought about all the times they had found warnings on old wrecks, and how those warnings had usually been about radiation or unstable reactors. Things that were dangerous but manageable. "We go in," she decided, "but carefully, very carefully." The airlock opened with a sound like a dying animal. The air inside was cold and dead, unchanged for longer than human minds could really understand. Led the team personally, with at her side and 6 others behind them. Came too, though his hands never stopped shaking. Inside, they found rows upon rows of pods. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. They stretched away into the darkness in every direction, arranged in perfect circles that spiraled toward some central point could not yet see. Each pod contained a body. "Mother of God," whispered. Moved to the nearest pod and wiped away dust that had accumulated over eons. Inside, she saw a creature unlike anything in the Coalition's databases. It had too many limbs and not enough eyes. It was frozen in a pose of absolute terror. "They're all different," reported, his scientific curiosity briefly overcoming his fear. "Different species, different time periods. Some of these beings went extinct millions of years ago, others we've never seen before." "A prison," realized. "This is a prison." They moved deeper, following the spiral pattern toward the center. More pods, more aliens, more faces frozen in silent screams. Whatever this place was, its prisoners had not gone quietly. Finally, they reached the center. A single pod stood there, larger than all the others. It sat on a raised platform surrounded by machinery so advanced it looked like magic. Warning symbols covered every surface, the same symbols had seen on dead worlds. The pod was empty. "No breast, no, no, no." Approached the pod carefully. A holographic display flickered to life at her touch, showing information in a language the ship's computers struggled to translate. Most of the text was corrupted or too alien to understand, but some words came through. Prisoner designation, the Hollow King. Crimes, translation error. Consumed stars, translation error. DEVOURED futures, translation error. Silence between thoughts. Status error. The seal is broken, said. Whatever was in here got out. Before anyone could respond, the lights changed. The ancient systems that had been dormant for billions of years suddenly hummed with power. Displays flickered on throughout the chamber. The temperature dropped so fast that could see her breath. Then the voice came. It did not come through their ears. It came directly into their minds, bypassing sound entirely. It was cold and empty and old beyond measurement. Thank you. The crew grabbed their heads, dropped to his knees, screamed. Simply stood frozen, tears running down his face. I have waited so long, so very long. Organic minds are so rare now, so precious. What are you? Demanded, forcing the words out through the pressure in her skull. I am hunger, I am the space between your thoughts. I am what waits when the stars go dark, and I am free. The voice paused, and when it spoke again, could hear something that might have been pleasure. Which of you wishes to be first? The lights went out completely. In the darkness, someone screamed. When the emergency lights flickered back on 3 seconds later, Ensign Torres was gone. His boots stood where he had been standing. They were filled with fine gray ash. Run, shouted. They ran, back through the spiral of pods, past the frozen faces of ancient prisoners, through corridors that seemed longer than before. Behind them, something laughed without sound. They made it to the airlock. They made it to the ship, ordered emergency departure before the outer door had even finished sealing. The persistent hope tore away from the ancient prison at maximum speed. On the bridge, the surviving crew members gasped and cried and held each other. They had escaped. But as the ship raced through the void, noticed something wrong. A shadow in the corner of her vision, a whisper at the edge of her hearing. The Hollow King had not stayed behind. It was with them now. And it was hungry. 3 days passed, 3 terrible days. The persistent hope flew through empty space at maximum speed, racing toward the nearest human outpost. But distance meant nothing to the thing that had followed them. The Hollow King was not a creature of flesh and blood. It did not need doors or airlocks. It existed in the spaces between things, in shadows and silence, in the static between radio signals. And it was hunting them. Crewman vanished on the 2nd day. He had gone to check the water recyclers alone. When he did not return, led a search team. They found his uniform crumpled on the floor, filled with gray ash. His wedding ring sat on top, still warm. On the 3rd day, Lieutenant Park disappeared during her sleep shift. Her bunkmate woke to find ash on the pillow next to him. Captain gathered the remaining 9 crew members in the mess hall. Fear filled the room like smoke. Some of them cried. Others sat in stunned silence. Stood by the door with his weapon drawn, though he knew bullets would do nothing against their enemy. We need to understand what we're fighting, said. Doctor, tell us everything. Had spent 3 sleepless days studying the data they had downloaded from the prison before their escape. His eyes were red and his hands still shook, but his voice was steady. The Hollow King is not alive in any way we understand. It's a psychic parasite that feeds on consciousness, on minds. When it consumes you, it doesn't just kill your body. It absorbs everything you are. Your memories, your personality, your soul, if such a thing exists. You become part of it forever. How do we kill it? Asked. We can't. The coalition of species that imprisoned it tried everything. Antimatter weapons, black holes. They even fed it a dying star. Nothing worked. The Hollow King exists outside normal physics. It was born in the space between dimensions, in the void that exists underneath reality itself. The crew absorbed this in horrified silence. "So it's immortal," said flatly, "and unstoppable." The ancients thought so. The only solution they found was to trap it and starve it. Without minds to consume, it grows weak. They built the prison to keep it isolated forever. It's been starving for 2 billion years. "And we woke it up," said grimly. "We fed it." "Yes, our minds gave it strength for the first time in eons. It's still weak compared to what it was, but it's growing stronger with each person it takes." Navigator spoke up from the corner. She was young, barely 25, and tears streamed down her face. "So we're dead. We're all dead. There's nothing we can do." "No," said firmly. "There's always something we can do. The ancients trapped it once. That means it can be trapped again." "In theory. But the prison was designed by thousands of species working together for centuries. We're 12 people on a salvage ship." Before could respond, the lights flickered. A cold wind blew through the sealed room, and the voice returned, speaking directly into their minds. "Why do you struggle? Your kind is so brief, so fragile. I offer you eternity. Inside me, you will never die. You will never be alone." "Get out of our heads," shouted. The Hollow King laughed, and its laughter felt like ice water poured directly into their brains. "I know you all now. I have tasted enough of you to understand. You are a young species, chaotic, violent. You burn so brightly." The entity's attention seemed to focus on. She gasped and grabbed her head as invisible pressure built behind her eyes. You have such pain inside you, such loss. Let me take it away. Let me consume your suffering." Watched in horror as Snows began to bleed. The engineer fell to her knees, screaming. Her eyes rolled back. Gray lines started spreading across her dark skin, as if she was turning to ash from the inside out. Then something remarkable happened. Stopped screaming, her eyes focused, and she pushed back. "No," she said through gritted teeth. The gray lines stopped spreading. "I survived the Mars collapse. I dug through rubble for 3 days to save my brother. I rebuilt my life from nothing. I have carried pain you cannot imagine, and I am still standing." She forced herself to her feet, blood streaming from her nose. "You want my suffering. You can't have it. It's mine. It made me who I am, and I will not give you anything." The Hollow King recoiled, felt it in her mind, a sensation of shock and confusion. For a moment, just a moment, the ancient entity seemed uncertain. "Impossible. No mind has ever resisted me." Laughed, and there was no humor in it. "Then you've never met a human before, you son of a bitch." The presence suddenly, leaving them all gasping, collapsed into his arms, unconscious but alive. The gray lines faded from her skin. Stared at her chief engineer with new understanding. It couldn't take her. She fought it off. Was already thinking, his fear temporarily forgotten in scientific excitement. Human psychology. We evolved under constant predator pressure. Our minds developed defenses against mental threats that older species never needed. We're stubborn. We're contrary. We hold on to things even when it hurts us. "We're too broken to break," said quietly. Exactly. The Hollow King has consumed millions of minds over billions of years, but it has never encountered anything like humanity. We might be resistant to it in ways no other species has been. Hope flickered in his chest for the first time since the nightmare began. But before she could speak, the ship's computer interrupted with an alarm. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual signals from the prison station." Rushed to the nearest console. What she saw made her blood run cold. The prison was broadcasting. A powerful signal was spreading outward into the void, reaching across light years in every direction. And deep in space, other signals were responding. "The other prisoners," whispered. "The Hollow King is waking them up." Watched the display as more and more response signals appeared. Dozens, hundreds. each one coming from some dark corner of the galaxy where ancient horrors had been locked away and forgotten. They had not just released one monster, they had started an awakening, and humanity was running out of time to stop it. The planet 442b appeared on their screens like a ghost from another age. Once, millions of years ago, it had been home to one of the many species that had joined together to imprison the Hollow King. Now it was a graveyard of crystalline spires that reached toward empty skies. "Are you sure about this?" asked as the persistent Hope entered orbit. Captain nodded grimly. "If we're going to fight this thing, we need to understand it. Though we're part of the coalition that trapped it, maybe they left something behind that can help us." Two more crew members had been lost during the journey. The Hollow King could not take them as easily as before, not since had proven that humans could resist, but it was patient and clever. It waited for moments of weakness, for exhaustion to break down defenses, for despair to create cracks in their mental armor. 7 crew members remained, 7 humans against an ancient god of hunger. The away team descended through clouds of crystalline dust. There had been beings who thought in patterns of mathematics and harmony. Their cities reflected this, with towers that grew in perfect spiral sequences and streets that followed equations the human eye could barely trace. Walked in front, his scanner searching for any active technology. They achieved what they called transcendence about 3 million years ago. Their physical forms died, but they uploaded their consciousnesses into quantum crystal matrices. Some of those matrices might still be functioning. "You're saying they might still be here?" asked. She was walking slowly, still weakened from her battle with the Hollow King, but she had refused to stay on the ship. "Fragments of them maybe, echoes." They found what they were looking for in the heart of the largest city, a structure that looked like a frozen waterfall of light, untouched by the decay that had claimed everything else. Inside, holographic displays still flickered with data millions of years old. Approached the central console carefully. "Hello, is anyone there?" For a long moment nothing happened. Then the light changed, the displays shifted, and a presence filled the chamber, different from the Hollow King but equally ancient. "Who disturbs the memory of the KATH?" The voice was not cold like the Hollow King's. It felt like wind chimes and mathematical sequences, beautiful and strange and very tired. "We are humans," said. "We came from Earth, far from here. We accidentally released the Hollow King from its prison, and now we're trying to stop it." Silence followed, then something that might have been laughter, though it sounded like breaking glass. "Humans, we do not know this word. Your species did not exist when we lived. We evolved after your time, but we're here now and we need your help." The presence considered this. Displays flickered with data as the fragment of consciousness processed their request. "The Hollow King is free. We feared this day. The prison was meant to last forever, but forever is a long time, and we knew that eventually something would go wrong." "Can you tell us how to stop it?" asked. "How to trap it again?" They shared its memories with them. Images flooded their minds, clearer than any hologram. They saw a galaxy at war, hundreds of species fighting against a single enemy. They saw stars going dark as the Hollow King consumed entire solar systems. They saw the desperate plan to trap it, the sacrifices made, the millions who died to build the prison. The containment was not physical. It was cognitive. We created a thought structure so complex that the Hollow King became trapped inside it. An endless loop of ATTMPTD consumption that fed on itself. But the trap required an exit point too close. An organic mind had to serve as the door that could be scaled shut. "And our minds opened that door," said heavily. "Yes, you became the exit. Now the trap can be reset, but only if a mind can hold the Hollow King's attention long enough for the PROTOSULS2 REINITILIZE. Approximately 4 of your MINUTES." Leaned forward, What happens to the person who holds its attention? The Hollow King will attack with everything it has. No member of the coalition ever survived more than 40 of your seconds under full assault. The task is impossible. Nothing is impossible, said quietly. The present studied them then, really examined them for the first time. Its attention moved from human to human, analyzing, calculating. You are strange creatures. Your minds are chaos. You contradict yourselves constantly. You fear death and run toward it. You love and hate with equal strength. You are broken in ways that should destroy you, and yet you survive. Thank you, said uncertainly. It is not an insult. It is wonder. The species of the coalition were ordered, elegant. Their minds were harmonious and beautiful, and the Hollow King consumed them like water absorbs light. But your chaos might protect you. The shared more memories. The coalition's greatest minds had studied the Hollow King for centuries, trying to understand how it fed. They learned that it consumed order, that it broke down organized consciousness into digestible pieces. The more structured a mind, the easier it was to eat. Humans, they observed, had the least structured minds of any sentient species it had ever analyzed. Their thoughts jumped randomly. Their emotions overrode their logic. They held contradictory beliefs without even noticing. They were, in the mathematical models of the beautifully broken. We could not defeat the Hollow King because we were too perfect. Perhaps your imperfection is what the universe needs. Felt something shift inside her. Fear was still there, but something else was growing alongside it. Not hope exactly. Something harder. Something that felt like stubbornness. Tell us exactly what we need to do, she said. Every detail. We may be young compared to your coalition, but humans have a habit of surviving things we shouldn't. They began transferring data, ancient protocols and containment algorithms that the ship's computers would need days to fully understand. But as the information flowed, the fragment's light began to fade. We have waited so long to share this. Now our purpose is complete. We can finally rest. Thank you, said. We won't waste what you've given us. This presence dimmed until it was barely visible. Its last words echoed in the crystal chamber. The Hollow King is not evil. It is simply hungry. Perhaps, in your strange way, you can make it understand what it has never known. Perhaps you can teach the void to be less empty. Then the light went out, and the last echo of the fell silent after millions of years of waiting. The crew of the Persistent Hope stood in the darkness for a long moment, then squared her shoulders and turned to face her people. You heard them. We need a volunteer to hold the Hollow King's attention for 4 minutes while the trap resets. I won't order anyone to do this. You don't have to, said. I'll do it. I've already fought it once. Stepped forward. No, I'm the security officer. Protecting this crew is my job. Both of you stand down, said firmly. I'm the captain. If anyone is going to walk into that thing's mind, it's going to be me. She raised a hand before they could argue. That's an order. Now let's get back to the ship. We have 4 days to prepare for the fight of our lives. As they walked back through the dead city, the shadows seemed to grow deeper. The Hollow King was watching. It knew what they had learned, and it was afraid. For the first time in 2 billion years, its prey was fighting back. The preparations took 3 days. 3 days of fear and determination and impossible hope. Captain spent most of that time in a small room with Doctor, learning techniques that humanity's first telepaths had developed centuries ago. The methods were designed to protect the mind by dividing it, creating separate compartments that could be lost without destroying the whole. It was like building walls inside your own head, safe rooms where the core of who you were could hide. The key is to accept that you will lose parts of yourself, explained. Don't try to protect everything. That's impossible. Instead, choose what matters most and build your defenses around that. thought about what she would save if she could only save a few things. Her memories of her mother teaching her to fly, the feeling of commanding her first ship, the faces of her crew, the stubborn belief that there was always a way forward, no matter how dark things got. "I think I understand," she said. While prepared her mind, the rest of the crew worked on the technical aspects, and the engineers integrated the containment protocols into the ship systems, ran security drills, keeping everyone sharp despite the terror that hung over them like a fog. Even Navigator, who had barely stopped crying for days, found strength in having a task to complete. The Hollow King did not rest during this time. It attacked constantly, probing for weakness. Crewman Singh lost his battle on the second night, consumed while he slept despite the guards posted outside his door. His ashes drifted through the ventilation system like gray snow. 6 humans remained. On the morning of the 4th day, gathered everyone in the cargo bay. The containment device sat in the center of the room, a crude copy of ancient technology that hummed with barely controlled energy. Cables connected it to every system on the ship. "You all know the plan," said. "I'm going to interface directly with the Hollow King. My job is to hold its attention for 4 minutes while the containment protocols. The rest of you need to keep the ship running no matter what happens." "What if you can't hold it?" asked her voice small. "Then you continue the mission without me. Warn Earth. Warn everyone. The prison is broadcasting and other things are waking up. Humanity needs to know what's coming." Stepped forward and clasped hand. "You come back to us, Captain. That's an order." Smiled grimly. "That's not how orders work." "I don't care." The interface was simple but terrifying. A helmet connected to the containment device that would project consciousness outward, making her visible to the Hollow King in a way it could not ignore. She would become bait, a bright light in the darkness that the ancient hunger would not be able to resist. Sat in the chair and let secure the straps around her wrists and ankles. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Initiating interface in 30 seconds, announced. The lights flickered, the temperature dropped. The Hollow King knew what was coming and it was preparing. 20 seconds. Closed her eyes and found the walls she had built inside her mind. Mother teaching her to fly, her first ship, her crew's faces, the stubborn belief that there was always a way. 10 seconds. She thought of all the species that had fought this monster before, all the civilizations that had fallen, all the minds that had been consumed over 2 billion years of hunger. They were inside the Hollow King now, trapped forever in its endless void. Maybe, she thought, she could give them something. Maybe she could make their endless suffering mean something. Interface active. The universe exploded. Consciousness shot outward and collided with the Hollow King. It was like diving into an ocean made of nothing, a vast emptiness that was somehow also full of screaming voices. She felt the entity's attention focus on her, and it was terrible beyond words. "You came to me." The Hollow King's voice was everywhere. How brave, how foolish. "I came to talk," managed to think. The entity laughed. The sound was made of a billion stolen voices all crying out together. "Talk. They all want to talk at first. THEY beg and bargain and pray. In the end, THEY all taste the same." The attack began. Felt herself being torn apart, layer by layer. Memories ripped away like pages from a book. Her first kiss gone. Her graduation from the academy gone. Her father's face gone. Each loss was a knife of ice through her heart. 40 seconds, the longest any coalition member had survived. Kept holding. The walls she had built absorbed some of the damage, sacrificing lesser memories to protect what mattered. But the Hollow King was ancient and patient and very, very good at this. 1 minute. Her mental defenses began to crack. The entity found the walls and started breaking them down. Felt her identity fragmenting, felt herself becoming less with each passing second. Why do you fight? The Hollow King asked. You cannot win. No one has ever won. Because, gasped through the pain, someone has to try. 1 minute 30 seconds. The entity paused its assault. For just a moment, something like curiosity flickered through its vast darkness. You fascinate me, little creature. You know you will die, and yet you came anyway. Why? Use that moment of hesitation. Instead of defending, she reached out. She touched the Hollow King's consciousness, and for the first time she tried to understand it. What she found shocked her. The Hollow King was not evil. It was not malicious. It was just hungry, empty. It had been born in the void between realities, in a place where nothing existed except itself. It had never known anything but loneliness and the desperate need to fill the emptiness inside it. It consumed minds not because it hated them, but because contact was impossible for it any other way. It could only touch other beings by absorbing them. It had never experienced connection without destruction. 2 minutes. You're alone, said. You've always been alone. That's why you eat. Not because you're a monster, but because you don't know how else to not be empty. The Hollow King went very still. No one has ever said that to me. No one has ever understood you before. The Coalition fought you because they were afraid. They never tried to see what you really are. 2 minutes 30 seconds. The entity's assault resumed, but something was different. There was confusion in it now, uncertainty. The Hollow King had existed for billions of years. In all that time, no one had ever offered it understanding instead of fear. Understanding changes nothing. I am what I am. I cannot stop being hungry. I know, but you could be less alone. 3 minutes. On the ship, watched the containment readings climb toward critical levels. The protocols were almost ready. Just 1 more minute. Come on, Captain, she whispered. Hold on. In the void between minds was falling apart. She had lost almost everything now. Only the core remained, the few precious things she had protected from the start. Mother teaching her to fly, her crew's faces, the stubborn belief. She held onto that belief with everything she had left. The belief that monsters could become something else. That understanding was always worth pursuing. That even the darkest void deserved a little light. 3 minutes 30 seconds. The Hollow King reached toward her core, ready to consume the last pieces of who she was. But it hesitated. You are the first to see me, it said. The first to speak to me as if I were real. You are real, replied. You're just lost. We're all lost sometimes. 3 minutes 50 seconds. In the distance, heard alarms. The containment protocols were activating. The trap was almost ready to close. I do not want to go back to the empty, the Hollow King said, and for the first time its voice held something other than hunger. It was so cold, so lonely. I know, said, I'm sorry. 4 minutes. The trap closed. Screamed as the containment protocols ripped the Hollow King away from her, forcing the ancient entity back into its recursive loop. She felt it go, felt its final confused cry echo through her damaged mind. Then everything went black. She woke up in the medical bay with standing over her, tears running down the engineer's face. You did it, said. 4 minutes and 12 seconds, you held it. Tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Pressed a cup of water to her lips. The Hollow King, she managed. Contained, the trap is holding, it's over. Lay back and stared at the ceiling. Her mind felt hollow, empty in places where memories used to be. She could not remember her mother's face anymore, could not remember her first ship's name. But she remembered the Hollow King's last cry, that confused, lonely sound as it was dragged back into imprisonment. It's over, she thought. But somehow she knew that wasn't quite true. 6 months had passed since the day Captain held the Hollow King. The persistent hope had returned to Earth as heroes, though did not feel heroic. She felt tired and broken and strangely sad. The doctors said she had lost approximately 30% of her long-term memories to the entity's assault. She would never get them back. The person she had been before the void was gone forever. But she had survived, and more importantly, she had learned something that changed everything. The Hollow King was not the only prisoner waking up. Doctor had been right. The signal from the ancient prison had spread across the galaxy, and other containment facilities were failing. Reports came in every week of strange phenomena, of shadows that moved wrong, of voices that spoke without mouths. The galaxy's forgotten nightmares were stirring. The Terran coalition faced a choice. Some argued for quarantine, build walls around the dangerous regions of space, guard the borders and hope the ancient prisons held, let the monsters stay locked away where they belonged. Others called for destruction, find the prisons and destroy them completely. If the containment was failing, then eliminate the threat permanently, no matter the cost. But had a different idea. She stood before the Coalition Council, wearing her captain's uniform despite the tremors that still ran through her hands. The council members watched her with a mixture of respect and wariness. This woman had touched a god and lived. No one was quite sure what to make of her anymore. The Hollow King was not evil, said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. It was hungry and lonely and desperately empty. The ancient coalition that imprisoned it never tried to understand it. They just locked it away and hoped it would stay forgotten. It killed billions, Admiral Torres said. His son had been Ensign Torres, the first crewman consumed on the prison station. His voice was cold. It destroyed civilizations. Yes, because that was the only way it knew to exist. But that doesn't mean it had to stay that way. That doesn't mean the others have to be the same. Took a deep breath. I am proposing that humanity become the new wardens of the ancient prisons, not to keep the entities locked away forever, but to study them, understand them, find out which ones are truly dangerous and which ones were simply different in ways that scared the species that imprisoned them. The council erupted in argument. Some called her insane, others accused her of sympathizing with monsters, but a few listened, a few understood. 2 months later, Outpost Vigil was established in orbit around the original prison station. Commanded it, leading a team of specialists from across human space. Scientists and soldiers, psychologists and engineers, all dedicated to a single impossible mission, understanding the universe's oldest nightmares. The work was slow and dangerous. Some of the prisoners were exactly what they seemed, monsters of pure hunger and destruction that had to remain contained forever. Others were more complex, ancient beings who had been imprisoned not for crimes, but for being inconvenient, for challenging the beliefs of species that no longer existed, for simply being too strange to tolerate. One by one, and her team evaluated each prisoner. Some they kept locked away. Others they studied, trying to find ways to communicate, to understand, to build bridges across impossible gaps. The Hollow King remained in its recursive loop, endlessly consuming itself, unable to reach out to the universe it had once terrorized, but kept her promise from that terrible day in the void. Once a year, she returned to the prison's core and sat in front of the containment field, and she talked. She told the Hollow King about humanity, about their chaotic, contradictory nature, about their capacity for both tremendous cruelty and tremendous compassion. She told it about her crew, about the ones who had been lost and the ones who had survived. She told it about her own life, the memories she still had, and the empty spaces where memories used to be. The entity could not respond. The trap held it frozen, unable to reach out or communicate. But sensors detected tiny fluctuations in the containment field whenever spoke. Something inside was listening. Years passed. Outpost Vigil grew from a small station to a major installation, staffed by hundreds of humans dedicated to their strange mission. Other species in the galaxy watched them with confusion and growing respect. These humans, they said, were either the bravest creatures in the universe or the most foolish. Perhaps both. On the 10th anniversary of the original containment, a young officer named Lieutenant Foster approached in the observation deck. Foster had been born after the crisis, raised on stories of the Hollow King and the brave captain who had faced it. To her, was a legend. "Commander," Foster said, "may I ask you something?" Turned from the window. Her hair was gray now, and her hands never stopped trembling, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Of course. Why do we do this? Why take responsibility for these creatures? The other species locked them away and walked away. Why do we choose to carry this burden?" Considered the question for a long moment. Through the window, she could see the ancient prison rotating slowly against the stars. Inside it, thousands of beings waited in suspended animation, their fates uncertain. "Because someone has to," said finally, "and because understanding is always worth pursuing, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous, even when everyone else says it's impossible." She smiled slightly. "Humans are stubborn that way. We don't know when to quit. But some of those things are genuinely evil. Some of them would destroy us if they got the chance." "Yes, and we keep those ones contained. But not all of them are evil. Some of them are just different, and different doesn't deserve to be locked away forever." Foster looked out at the prison, her young face troubled. "The other species think we're crazy." Laughed, a sound that carried echoes of old pain and hard-won wisdom. "They're probably right, but maybe the universe needs a little crazy. Maybe it needs someone willing to look at the darkness and ask why it's dark instead of just running away." She put a hand on Foster's shoulder. "We're the wardens now, not because we're the strongest or but because we're stubborn enough to stay and foolish enough to hope. That's our gift to the universe. That's what humans do." In the observation deck's window, their reflections overlapped the stars. Two humans, standing between the light and the dark, choosing to carry a burden that spanned billions of years. Across the galaxy, the other species watched and wondered. These humans, they said, were unlike anything they had ever seen. They made friends with monsters. They offered mercy to horrors. They looked into the void, and instead of screaming, they asked if the void was okay. It was, older civilizations agreed, a very human form of madness. But perhaps, in a universe full of ancient hungers and forgotten prisons, madness was exactly what was needed. In the deepest part of the prison, in its recursive loop of endless self-consumption, the Hollow King stirred. It could not think, not truly. The trap kept its mind folded in upon itself, unable to reach out or grow. But somewhere in the infinite darkness of its existence, something was different. Something had changed. Once a year, a voice came to it. A small, fragile human voice that spoke of things the Hollow King had never known. Compassion, understanding, hope. The voice expected nothing in return. It simply spoke, year after year, without fail. The Hollow King had existed for billions of years. It had consumed civilizations. It had devoured stars. It had been the terror of 1,000 species across 1,000 worlds. And now, for the first time in its endless existence, it was not entirely alone. That was humanity's gift. Not weapons or technology or conquest, just a simple refusal to abandon even the most hopeless cases. A stubborn, foolish belief that everything deserved a chance at understanding. The void was still dark, the hunger was still there, the ancient prisons still held their secrets. But somewhere in the infinite black, a light was shining, small and fragile and impossibly brave. Human. And the universe would never be quite the same.